What if Obi Wan Kenobi was reborn with all of his memories? Hey guys, really quick, from the 26th of December until the 2nd of January, at Fantasy Sabers we're giving away a free The Sun affordable version with every sale using code Luke, so check that out. Let's start the story on the first Death Star. Vader strikes down Obi-Wan, who accepts the attack and vanishes after his death. Obi-Wan's vision went black, expecting to be transformed into the living force to return as a force ghost to guide Luke from this extra dimension. But as he opens his eyes, he saw something else. He thought it was a dream. He saw around him the Jedi Temple, younglings that he remembers from his past in the same class as him. He tried to blink the dream away, but it didn't work. He played out his day, learning how to control the Force from the Masters and basic lightsaber combat. The day ended and they all went to bed, as he expected to be transported to a different dream, as he thought this was all part of the transition to a Force ghost. However, he woke up as a youngling again, and lived through a similar day until sleep later that night. Surely this dream will be over now, he thought, but he was wrong. And the days kept on going, as he started to realize that this wasn't a dream. He had been reborn, given a second chance through the Force, but why? Obi-Wan continues his so-called training as a youngling, and wonders what he'll do with this second chance. That there must be a reason the Force has done this, and he came up with a few conclusions on what he will do. He will expose Palpatine, and save his best friend to be Anakin Skywalker. Obi-Wan remembers all of his Force teachings, and instantly became the best in his class. In the original timeline, he wasn't a particularly standout gifted Jedi. He holds some of his power back in reserve, since he doesn't want to stand out too much. However, he did gain a lot of attention from the more senior masters in the Order, and could tell a few of them were considering taking him as an apprentice. The day of this election came, when the Jedi Knights and Masters seeking out Padawans came to the younglings area. One master stood out for Obi-Wan, and he attempted to connect through to his mind with the Force, as Master Qui-Gon felt the connection, believing it to be the Force itself that brought him and Obi-Wan together, and he decided to take Obi-Wan as an apprentice. Obi-Wan's training begins under Qui-Gon, but it's not really training. He's already gone through all of these lessons once before, so passes through them with perfection. But as Qui-Gon details his philosophy of the living Force for a second time to Obi-Wan, but he can't help but feel more drawn to it. He didn't hear much of his philosophy since his death, and starts to realize that maybe this was the problem with the Jedi. Obi-Wan slowly increased his power in the Force. His lightsaber skills were impeccable, and Qui-Gon was extremely surprised and happy with Obi-Wan's progress. They spent years together. Obi-Wan at this time was stronger than he was in the original timeline at this age, about the strength he was at the start of the Clone War. His body was lacking, but his Force powers were not. He continued to excel as he got older. Qui-Gon couldn't quite believe the rate, and started to think that Obi-Wan would play a definitive role in the coming years. For years now, Qui-Gon had sensed the darkness rising, and knew the Jedi would have to change in order to counter it. Could Obi-Wan be pivotal in this? They go on many missions around the galaxy, but on one particular mission in the Outer Rim, Obi-Wan knew the time had come. He suggested to his master that they make a detour on his return, that he feels a disturbance in the Force. At this point, Obi-Wan is around 17 years old, halfway through his apprenticeship, and tells Qui-Gon that he feels the Force pulling him to Tatooine. They make the diversion, and Obi-Wan takes them to Shmi's house to find her and a young 2-year-old Anakin Skywalker, still a toddler, and tells Qui-Gon he feels the disturbance around this boy. Qui-Gon was curious. He ran some tests, and found the boy to have an extremely high midichlorian count, over 20,000, and was a son born to no father. Could he be the Chosen One? Did Obi-Wan find the Chosen One, prophesied to bring balance to the Force? Qui-Gon explained to Shmi the significance of Anakin, and she sends him off with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon for a better life, and they bring Anakin back to the Jedi Temple. Obi-Wan felt a sense of happiness when they found Anakin, knowing that now in this timeline, he will not be burdened by the pain of his past. They take Anakin back to the Jedi Council, proclaiming they may have found the Chosen One, and he begins his life as a youngling in the temple. No one had an issue with him being trained, because he was 2 years old, not 9. The time came when Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon were sent to Mandalore to protect Satine Crits during a time of political war. They fell in love all over again. Obi-Wan couldn't help but feel shrouded with guilt over letting her die in the original timeline, and thought he would be okay with letting her go again, but decided he would use this second chance for change. They spent a lot of time together, and he decided to be selfish and wanted to take Satine up on her offering of being together. But first he consults Qui-Gon's opinion, telling his master about his feelings for Satine and asks him for his advice. Qui-Gon tells Obi-Wan that these feelings are normal and whether he wants to act on them is depending on himself. That he doesn't believe that forming an attachment is bad, but if the fear surrounding an attachment is not controlled, then the attachment can become dangerous and lead towards the dark path. He tells Obi-Wan that he will permit him being with Satine and keep their relationship a secret from the council if he manages to conquer his fear, and if at any point during their relationship he lets his fear take over, then he will forbid them from being together. But Qui-Gon also tells Obi-Wan about his greater plans for change within the Jedi Order's philosophy, so Obi-Wan will be his trial for this. Kenobi accepts, and together they do more training on fear, Qui-Gon putting him through some tests which he learned from the Force priestesses themselves, and Obi-Wan proved to Qui-Gon that he conquered his fear and started dating Satine. They spent a lot of time together between missions, Obi-Wan using his time of leave to see her, and she would personally come to Coruscant often for political meetings, but mainly to see and spend time with Obi-Wan. Kenobi stayed an apprentice for a few more years, and when he reached 23 years old, he became a Jedi Knight of the Order, one of the strongest in the last few decades. But now, Obi-Wan decided it was time to tell Qui-Gon the truth. He needed to set his real plan in motion to expose Palpatine, and would need Qui-Gon's help. He sits Qui-Gon down one day in a meditation chamber, and details him through the rough truth that he was reborn in this life after he'd lived his old life in a completely different timeline. Qui-Gon was shocked and didn't know whether Obi-Wan was telling the truth, but the conviction in his voice was convincing. Qui-Gon started asking a few questions about the original timeline, but Obi-Wan didn't tell him much. But from Obi-Wan's reaction, Qui-Gon knew it didn't go well. He asks Obi-Wan if it's related to the rising darkness the galaxy has been experiencing, who says that it is, which has Qui-Gon worried. Kenobi tells him that the Sith return in full force and almost completely wipe out the Jedi. Qui-Gon couldn't believe it. The Jedi are 10,000 strong. They couldn't be defeated so easily. He asks Obi-Wan if they have any hope, who tells his master they do, the Chosen One. He continues on saying that in his original life, he failed the Chosen One, leading to the Sith's victory. Qui-Gon pauses and asks Obi-Wan why he failed him, why he failed Anakin and not himself Qui-Gon. Kenobi stared back blankly, and Qui-Gon knew the answer, that he did not live to see Anakin's fall. Kenobi stated that Anakin is the Chosen One, destined to bring balance to the Force and steer the Jedi back to the correct path. However, with the knowledge that he has from his previous life, they may be able to take out the Sith without him, and Obi-Wan tells Qui-Gon the fate of his master Dooku. This brought sadness to Qui-Gon. However, at this point, Dooku had not yet turned, and they could use him for an opportunity. The three of them meet, and Dooku is caught up with the truth of Obi-Wan's identity, and Dooku had a similar reaction to Qui-Gon. But what shocked both of them the most is when he revealed the identity of the Sith Lord Darth Sidious was indeed Senator Palpatine. They came up with a plan, as Obi-Wan told them that Palpatine will soon start to reach out to Dooku and subtly manipulate him to join his side and join the Sith. But through this, they can lure him into a false sense of security and expose him. Dooku wasn't interested in the dark side in this timeline because of the hope of Anakin Skywalker in saving both the Jedi and Republic. The first meeting between Dooku and Palpatine happened at a political event that Palpatine was hosting. They talked a lot that evening, Palpatine planting the subtle opinion that he wasn't fond of the Jedi. Dooku played his part well, and also stated that he'd started to have similar opinions, but that the Senate wasn't much better. Corruption ran deep through the Grand Chamber like no other. The next time they meet, Palpatine starts discussing that there might be possible solutions to both of their problems with the Jedi and Senate, but may involve darker mechanisms. Dooku states that he does not fear the method, but rather focuses on the result. These meetings happened a few times, up to where Palpatine revealed that he was working with the Sith, who wanted the same as them, and set up a meeting with the three of them at the industrial region on Coruscant. But this was a trap. Dooku met with Palpatine there, who revealed himself as Darth Sidious, but as he did this, The building was surrounded by Republic troops, and the Jedi Council burst in, lightsabers ignited. They all fought, but Palpatine was not strong enough for the entire Jedi Council, and he was defeated, put in constraints, and sentenced to life in prison. His plans had been fully exposed: the clone army, Camino, Sifo Dyas, everything, and the Jedi now believed they had defeated the Sith. However, they couldn't be more mistaken. At this point in the timeline, Darth Plagueis is still alive, and was angered at his apprentice's failures. He takes over the training of Darth Maul, and had to change the grand plan. He favored the clone army, but that idea would have to be scrapped. He went forth with the plan to create the Confederacy of Independent Systems, and would use this to create a separate faction outside of the Republic, and take over with brute force alone. A couple of years go by, whilst Plagueis did this, and Anakin is chosen by Qui-Gon Jinn to become his apprentice. After the Sith's supposed defeat, Qui-Gon and Dooku accept positions on the Jedi Council, as they believe they can directly influence change inside the Jedi Order. Anakin's training was short under Qui-Gon. After being a youngling for a decade, his power far exceeded any youngling in history. He was basically a fully fledged Padawan by this point, a master of lightsaber combat and force techniques. And what Qui-Gon trained Anakin on was the living force and his mindset, giving him experience in the real galaxy and guiding him through tough situations, which it seemed like he was born for. Every Jedi in the Order recognized his power and knew he was no doubt the future of the Jedi Order. Qui-Gon, Dooku, Obi-Wan, and now Anakin meet one day, as Dooku discusses how there are still reports of unrest and conflict being fostered in the galaxy, that the rising darkness they all sensed had not faltered. Qui-Gon questions Obi-Wan, asking if they could have missed something. He thinks on this. Kenobi doesn't believe Maul could be the one doing this, since they haven't been able to track him down, but doesn't think it's possible anything more sinister is at play. Dooku decides to launch his own investigation, and use the Force to guide him around the galaxy, in search for the mysterious cause of the darkness they all feel. His investigations take him to Geonosis, where he sneaks in on one of the main command buildings, to find Hago Damask leading a meeting with the Techno Union, Commerce Guilds, International Banking Clan, and many more. Hago Damask is the real identity of Darth Plagueis. Dooku quietly speaks through his comlink to Obi-Wan and Anakin, detailing what he sees: a group of elites secretly forming a new government and creating their own personal droid army. Hago Damask orders everyone to leave, as silence encompasses the room, as Damask uses the Force to grip Dooku and pull him down and out of his hiding place. Dooku stands stunned, so there is another Sith that they were unaware of, as Damask introduces himself as Darth Plagueis, the master of Darth Sidious, whom Dooku tricked, but the same will not happen today. They both brandished their lightsabers, and the fight was close. Plagueis was a skilled warrior in his prime. However, Dooku was slightly past his. He was caught by a bolt of lightning, and then another, and another, until he no longer had the strength to fight. Plagueis didn't kill him, merely captured Dooku, and sent him to Megiddo, another being, to conduct his Force experiments on. In this timeline, Plagueis lived far longer than he had in the original timeline, because Palpatine was captured before he could kill his master, and therefore had conducted more experiments on the midichlorians, and had almost mastered his goal, the control over life and death. When Dooku didn't report back, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan knew he must have fallen, but reported this news to the Council immediately, who informed the Senate that the Confederacy of Independent Systems was on the verge of invading the Republic. Obi-Wan felt stupid. Why hadn't he ever considered that Palpatine had a master? Because of the rule of two and Maul existence, he thought this was not an option. In an attempt to change the dark future ahead, had he instead condemned themselves to a worse fate? And now the Republic is defenseless. No clones, no army to fight the onslaught of droids that came for them. The Separatists declare war and instantly occupy the Outer Rim worlds with their armies and start moving in towards the Inner Rim. The Republic has no army and is forced to start conscription and start recruiting, but it's almost too late. Each system has to quickly procure their own military to defend their planets, but the might of the Separatists was too much. The Jedi are mobilized instantly and are sent to every system in the Mid-Rim, but it's not enough, as they start losing planet after planet. Plagueis knew the Jedi would be spread this thin, and because of this, he could take them all out slowly, literally one by one. The war lasts for a few weeks, as Plagueis had controlled the center point of the Mid-Rim, and uses this to move his forces towards the core worlds. He plans to take over with complete strength, declare himself as emperor, and then with absolute power, no one can overthrow him, and he himself will be the emperor until the end of time, with the power over life and death and the midichlorians. He was not worried that people will not be satisfied with his leadership, as he will far outlive their lifespans, and the new generation will not remember the Republic. Plagueis decides to attack Coruscant directly with a massive armada of separatist forces, but hidden inside the center of his fleet is an older looking ship from tens of thousands of years ago. He procured this ship only recently, and containing on it is an ancient Ricardan weapon powered by the dark side of the Force, with the power to permanently corrupt the Force itself, and this requires the death of thousands of Jedi to activate it. Through this, he can ensure during his time as Emperor, there will be no hope of Jedi rebellion. He starts bombarding Coruscant, testing the surface level shields, now at maximum capacity. He targets the Jedi Temple as his attacks start to break through, and he can feel the Ricardan weapon slowly charge with the start of the Jedi's purge. But from around the planet, the Republic's defense forces attack, and Plagueis' ships are forced to engage. Obi Wan, Anakin, and Qui-Gon are mobilized on one of the Republic's Venator Star Destroyers, but each board small single-man fighters, as they've been tasked with defeating Plagueis himself. As Anakin flies towards Plagueis' ship, his mind swirls as he's hit with visions and a hidden voice, telling Anakin that he could be the one to bring peace to the galaxy if he joined the dark side and stood by Plagueis' side, that together they could be unstoppable and shape the galaxy how they desired. But Anakin was too strong in the Force, too well trained to be pulled by simple temptations of power. He moves steadily on as they land in Plagueis' hangar bay and can feel his location on the ship, but their ship shakes as they feel a huge surge of darkside energy as the three of them look outside the ship's window to see a humongous Force storm had been conjured and headed directly towards the Republic's fleet. Qui-Gon braces his stance and uses the Force to counteract the storm and completely give into his Force energy to its power, because if he fails here, the storm will destroy the Republic's entire forces and Coruscant would be lost. Anakin and Obi-Wan look at each other with sadness, knowing that what Qui-Gon is doing here will cost him his life. The amount of Force energy required to counteract the storm is too much for one man alone, but he's doing his duty. As they turn to rush towards the command bridge, they arrive to see Plagueis waiting for them, as they fight immediately. This fight was legendary, 3 masters of the Force and lightsaber combat going toe to toe, unleashing every possible Force technique from either side that had been learned in the last 25,000 years. But Plagueis takes the first victory as he kicks Kenobi's blade out of his hand and shoots a bolt of lightning at his chest, which renders him unconscious. Anakin stands, a better fighter alone, and charges at Plagueis. This is the moment he's been waiting for his entire life. They swing blades back and forth as they both feel it. The Ricardan super weapon had reached full charge, and all Plagueis has to do is feed it the dark side, which he does. His mind connects to the weapon as he fuels it with the Force, but Anakin does the same, not with the dark side however, but rather with the light. Their minds are locked in a dance of light and dark, as the one who prevails will determine the outcome of the weapon's output. Plagueis poured his entire body, mind, and power into the weapon. This is what he'd planned for his entire life, and his goals were upon them. But the enemy he was facing was no ordinary Jedi. He was a product of his perversions of the Force, the chosen one Anakin Skywalker, who he had accidentally created himself, whose connection to the light side was stronger than Plagueis could ever be to the dark. He overcame Plagueis and sent his entire energy back into him, which was too much for any being's mind to handle, as his entire brain, the entire circuitry of neurons and synapses were fried, leaving Plagueis a mere shell, and death would soon follow. The Ricardan super weapon's energy rises, not because it's about to fire, but because it's about to explode. Anakin gathers Obi-Wan, who's just regained consciousness, as they head towards their ships. As they enter the hangar bay, a wave of sadness came over them as they see Qui-Gon's body on the floor, lifeless. But he had successfully counteracted the storm and saved millions of lives, but at the cost of his own. They entered their ships and landed by what remained of the Jedi Temple, as they looked above to see the explosion of the Ricardan super weapon, which completely destroyed the entirety of Plagueis' fleet and the Separatist advancements. Anakin laid Qui-Gon down, now feeling a new sense of power after defeating the Sith and completing his duty. He focuses his Force energy into Qui-Gon's mind to slowly reactivate the neuron synapses to send signals to his heart and lungs. These activate as air slowly re-enters his body and blood is circulated to every organ. He counteracts the damage done to his brain due to the lack of blood supply, and in only a few minutes, Qui-Gon had returned to them, alive once again through the power of Anakin, the Chosen One. The three of them group up with the rest of the Jedi, Yoda, Windu, and many others. They reported Plagueis' defeat, and this was a turning point for the war against the Separatists. Their leadership had fallen, which no doubt would be followed by senseless grabs of power, and through this, the Jedi can lead the counterattack to save the Republic and rescue Dooku from capture, and with Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One, leading this assault, as in this timeline, he had fulfilled his duty, due to Obi Wan being reborn. If you enjoyed this video, you have to watch What If Anakin Was Reborn with all of his memories on Tatooine, or after Return of the Jedi. Don't forget to check out Fantasy Sabers and our special sales right now for the best sabers on the market. Please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.